Morning, everyone. Thank you all for coming out bright and early this morning. My name's Damien Duffy. I'm a chartered engineer and currently senior project manager with the NDFA. I was delighted to be invited by Alan to chair this morning's discussion, as the theme is a very important one for us, we believe, at the NDFA. In a moment, I'll elaborate a little bit on the nature of the work we do there and the scope of our projects we have in our current programmes. We've been a member of the CITA as a stakeholder organisation for the past 2 years, and there's been a lot of very good work done by the group, and all credit to Alan and Ralph and his team for coordinating the discussion on BIM and the transformational role it can have for us. This morning, we look forward to another very exciting chapter in that discussion. It's the second in our client series of 2014. We have a fantastic lineup, great speakers this morning, and looking forward greatly to the messages they have for us. Just a little bit on the NDFA. We were established under legislation in 2003. We report to the Minister of Finance. We are the state's financial advisor on capital projects over 20 million. We're the delivery agent for accommodation projects in the PPP sector. That's the design, build, finance and maintain projects. We're also financial advisor for the transport PPPs. We're delivering a devolved schools building programme for the Department of Education, and we're made up essentially of a team of project finance and project management professionals with public and private sector experience. PPPs in Ireland. To date, 9 major urban motorways and bypasses, 5 educational PPPs amounting to 15 schools, International Convention Centre, major criminal courts complex, the motorway service stations. The more recent PPPs we've had are the schools bundle 3, another 8 schools being delivered currently, coming to service commencement, the N11 roads, and soon the N17-18 road. Our current programme of works is the government's stimulus package and PPP programme. In 2012, the government announced a 2.25 billion investment in public infrastructure, 1.4 of that being in the PPP sector. Essentially, this allows us to get the debt off balance sheet, but in order to do that, we have to transfer the design and construction risk, and we also have to have the availability or the demand risk transferred also to the private sector. This really is important in the deficit reduction programme that we are obliged to adhere to, and more importantly, it's to stimulate jobs and growth. So that's our agenda at the moment. The projects in the programme: in the education sector, we've 12 schools in 2 bundles. We've the Grange-Gorman DIT work around the central and eastern quads. We've health sector primary care projects, approximately 12 of them. In the justice sector, there's 7 courthouses and 3 Garda stations. And in the transport side, that's been procured by the NRA. There are 3 major road projects in the pipeline there as well. Schools, we together about 130 million of CapEx. That tender is for the first bundle is due very shortly. Grange-Gorman, we've just recently announced the shortlist in March, and so the tender competition about to kick off there. Primary care, we've got expressions of interest in, and we are looking at those, so soon to start the procurement. And on the justice sector, we're hoping to move into the competition stages in Q2 for both the courthouses, comprising 7 courthouses around the country, and likewise for the Garda headquarter projects. There are 3 in this bundle, and we hope to be launching them also in Q2. So as I say, that's the context our project work. We're very interested in the BIM arena right now. We've, as I say, been part of the group here for the past 2 years. We think that there's a lot of benefits to be had. We think there's better quality, efficiency, and sustainability capabilities through the technologies. One of our key mandates is to drive better value for money across our public assets. We think BIM is a tool we can leverage. Particularly in the PPP sector, that in the projects we've had, the very nature of how collaboration works in those projects is a key catalyst for getting BIM off and going here. We think that the collaboration and the whole life risk management to delivery and delivering the operations is a perfect recipe for how BIM can deliver benefits. So, very excited about this morning's presentation and lineup. We have our first speaker is Terry Stocks. Terry, as you've seen, is the UK BIM Task Group Delivery Director and Deputy Estates Director for the Ministry of Justice. He's a chartered structural engineer by profession, with 20 years' experience in construction, programme and project management. He's been instrumental in developing and leading the MOJ initiative to improve project delivery. He's done a lot of work on lean processes in the MOJ and, of course, implementing BIM there. He's also leading the government's construction strategy pilot project, so hopefully he'll talk about that a little bit as well. He's chair of the UK Cabinet Office New Form of Procurement Committee and the Government Construction Client Board. He's a committee member there as well. So I think we've got the right man to talk to us about BIM for government. Terry, you're very welcome.
Thank you, Damien, and thank you very much, and good morning. I think I've probably expanded my brief a bit because I'm not just going to talk about BIM, although it's going to be a major part of it. I want to talk about lean delivery, because for me the two really come together. So I've got quite a lot of slides, so apologies for that, and I've asked Damien to give me a nod if I'm running behind time, but we'll canter through them because there's a lot that I want to share with you. So I'll run through the background, the drivers for change. You won't be surprised that the UK has also got a deficit reduction programme. UK BIM task group work. We'll go through the MOJ, BIM and Lean initiative programmes. I'll run through Cook and Wood, which is the trial project for the government BIM, and try and share with you as I go through some of the high-level benefits that we've achieved to date. So, it's all I want to go and say in this slide really is that we haven't got enough money. We've got a bigger UK national debt, and we've got more money going out than we've got coming in. We're getting a bit better, but that's having a knock-on effect with budgets that are handed down to departments. Some departments are worse than others. MOJ is what's called a non-protected department, so we're having to reduce our operating costs by 20%. So that means that we really have to be on top of our game to drive out cost and make sure that we're getting value in everything we do. In support of that, the central government, through the Cabinet Office, came up with the government construction strategy back in May 2011. And that started to articulate what they wanted central government clients to do. So, and industry really. They wanted to drive a challenge to industry through better project management and client management through departments. So the strategy was to drive down central government project cost, to provide more information to the construction industry. Each department now has a pipeline of work that's published, so contractors can start to sort of gear themselves up for work that's coming. That's the idea. Promote early contractor involvement, improve client leadership, that's really important, and support SMEs, so things like project bank accounts, involve them a bit earlier, make sure they get paid fairly, and the all-important government imperative to use BIM on central procurement projects. Okay, so that's a real big boon for us. To make sure that we are doing what we say, we've had to give Cabinet Office and Treasury our forecast of spend reductions, our target spend forecasts over the spending review period. And within MOJ Estates Directorate, we've signed up for 20% reduction in our benchmark cost for project delivery. Once a year, or twice a year, I think, the government construction strategy delivers a benchmark report that reports on how government departments are doing against their targets, and then that folds up into what we call our PECs, our Public Expenditure Committee Efficiency and Reform Group meetings, where our ministers sit round a table, and if we haven't done what we've said, they get it in the neck, so actually we get it in the neck. So there's an incentive all round to try and to meet your targets. What we're working on now as well, which is allied and carries on from the government construction strategy, is the Industrial Strategy for Construction 2025, which is a document that's been brought together not only from government but also from private sector constructors, and that's about driving 30% and more from whole life cycle and capital cost of projects, delivering them 50% faster. There's 50% greener in there, and there's also some stuff around reducing the deficit between trading of goods going out and coming back. Okay, the UK BIM task group was set up to pick up the BIM mandate. It was to raise the awareness of BIM level 2. The group was put together to support key central government departments in implementing BIM. It was to develop key guidance, documentation and case studies. So, when they started, what was BIM level 2? We started now with, we've got key documentation in the PAS series and the BS series, digital plan of works that we're working on. We've got set presentations that we're running with departments. So we're running alongside departments to build up their knowledge of BIM level 2 and their capability. And then we're also working with Cabinet Office now to put in place a legacy support group as we move forward, because the BIM strategy, or the BIM UK task force for level 2, the funding starts to wane at the end of this year. So we're trying to get departments up to a point that they are starting to implement BIM. And then during 2015, they'll start to work on their own. So by 2016, they're in a position to run with BIM themselves. And then the legacy organisation will then carry on the support. We've got the BIM Task Group website, www.bimtaskgroup.org. No doubt you've all had access to that. Really good source of information, regular newsletters updating on where we're moving and where departments are and the sort of interactions we've been having. There's some really good evidence-based material on there if you need to include that in your business cases. What is Level 2 BIM? I'm not going to go into this in any great detail because you've seen this, but Level 2 BIM is actually about data. It's about collecting data in a way that can be used and exploited throughout the course of the project. It's about developing models, separate models, not necessarily federated models, although we do federate them because that's where we do all the checking. But it's about data. I'm not going to go into it any more than that because you guys are probably aware of all that. It doesn't really change an awful lot from where we were. It's just that Kobe bit that scares people a little bit. But it's the natural progression on. Bit of a busy slide, but this is an extract from PAS 1192, part 2. And it just shows how BIM is sort of fully interactive and interoperable with the whole delivery cycle. So if you work through PAS 1192 Part 2, I think it actually starts to put a better project management process in your projects, so you deliver better projects anyway. So whether you are thinking about what you want at the inception of a project, passing that information on in a clear way to your constructor, that constructor then working with his supply chain to know what you want and to be able to set up to deliver that information for you. And then along the bottom there, you've got the project stages where we can clearly state, this is the information we want, this is the stage that we want it, And because it's in that COBie format, we can then interrogate the information that you're giving to us and start to run reports that says, right, this is good, this is bad. And before we move on to the next stage, we're ironing out those errors or misinterpretations as we go. But the really important thing is that the information grows layer on layer on layer as we go through the processes until at stage 6 we have the handover to operations. And we've got a full set of operational drawings that can, which means that we can operate the building much more efficiently from day one. Now, I don't know about you, but before we put BIM in, we were getting as-built information, just enough to operate the building safely, but it took a long time to get the rest of the drawings in, probably 6 or 7 months, and even then it was big piles of drawings that were difficult to interpret. So, the MOJ imperative. So we had a lean programme of work that we started in about January 2009, because we had a realisation that there's an inherent waste in the procurement and construction process of construction projects. It's just there. We don't know where it is exactly, but you need to do a bit of work to start identifying where that is and trying to drive it out. And I'll come on to how we do that in a second. But we've got a large estate. We've got the MOJ estate is worth about £8.5 billion. It's got over 1,600 buildings, and that includes 126 prisons, 550 probation buildings, 600 courts. We need to spend our money wisely because, if you remember, we've got a falling budget, but we've still got to maintain our estate in a fit-for-purpose, decent and safe way. We need to do that with reducing budgets, and we've got an ageing estate. A fair bit of our estate is actually pre-1900, so it's imperative that we're getting the best value out of every pound that we spend so we can modernise our estate that then makes us be able to hit those operational cost reductions. Just to give you an idea, the difference between estate, we've got a 1960s type development on the left, and you can see it's all higgledy-piggledy. So, and internally, it's all on individual floors. Very difficult to see flow of the people that are in there. So it's very staff-intensive, very maintenance-heavy. The one on the right is a much more modern prison. Funny enough, it's sort of based around the Victorian principles, but open landings, lots of light, people feel safer in there, good lines of sight, lower maintenance. That's the sort of estate that we want. That's the sort of modern estate that we're trying to drive for. And the operational costs are significantly less for a modern estate than they are for the older type. So, our dilemma. We need to maintain our existing estate. We need to build new buildings, and if we can do that, then we can start getting out of some of our old, inefficient buildings, which then releases money back into the pot for our maintenance and more new build. We've only got one pot of money, and we need to balance the estate, as it says, to have a sufficient capacity to make it more efficient in operation, but we've got one pot of money to do that. So we need to make sure that we're only maintaining the sites to the level that we require them. So don't invest massively in a site that you want to get rid of. Try to use some of that money so you can build a new prison, so you can then close the old and inefficient accommodation that you don't want anymore. So it's about understanding your estate, about driving best value. And to do this is where BIM comes into it, standardisation, DFMA, all those sort of things, because you're getting more money out for every pound that you spend, or you're getting more building for every pound that you spend. And that's really where we need to be. So, BIM, part of the bigger picture for us. It's got massive benefits all on its own, but you start to link it up with the other stuff that's coming in the construction strategy. The intelligent client function. Know what you want, know why you want it, know what you're buying. Create the environment with your contractors so you can deliver collaboratively, so you can engage with the contractor at the right time in their supply chain. So you start to get that innovation at the right time, at the right cost. Benchmark, know how much things should cost. Be able to set those targets intelligently, make them stretching, but work with your supply chain to get there. Continuous improvement, lean delivery, DFMA, all those things, and government soft landings. Government soft landing sits alongside BIM. What that means is we're trying to bring the operator and the FM provider in at the capital development of a project. So we're starting to get all their knowledge build up, but also their expertise in developing that type and running that type of building as we move forward. So really important. BIM is really important, but when you start to get all the other bits, they're much bigger than the sum of their individual parts. So the MOJ states we've got clear objectives. As it says, they're intelligently driving down costs. I'd like to think it's intelligently. Damien would can maybe critique it later. But we try to keep it simple, and we've got something that we call our cost component breakdown. And the top coloured bits is our cost of procurement. How much does it cost us to procure? How much is the design, the management of the design, the management of the delivery, the contractor site setup? They're all things in lean terms we would class as essential non-value add. So we've got to spend money on them, but in the long term, we want to spend our money on the asset. We want to spend it on the bricks and the mortar and the labour because we get more buildings for every pound that we spend. So if we can concentrate and drive down the cost of procurement and management on site, then we get more buildings for every pound that we spend. If we then look at the cost per metre squared, and we try and drive that down through our continuous improvement loop, we've got a better for less measure, which is driving up the product value and driving down the cost per metre squared. And that's just not going to happen on its own. So we use that as our central benchmark to test the efficiency of the stuff that we're putting through. So collaborative models of procurement, standardisation, benchmarks, design for manufacture, off-site, lean delivery, BIM, of course. All those things have an effect, and we try to measure their effect on how much of our pound goes in on the asset. So we've got a bit of a toolkit. We've set a toolkit out, lots of components. So we've got our cost of component benchmarking, which I touched on there. We've got our libraries and our BIM program. We've got our lean construction program, which I'll touch on in a second. Lots of things that are all tied into driving down the cost of the asset for us to purchase and to operate. So this is the sort of lean system that of project management we've got. I'll run through this very, very quickly. We operate one version of the truth. We're quite prescriptive in the way that we want our programs put together. And then we measure those programs on a weekly basis, and the teams will tell us online how many activities they started against how many they said they would, how many they finished against how many they said they'd finish. And we use what's called a buffered sort of program. So we put all the contingency effectively at the end. It's not rocket science, any of this. And when we reschedule the program on a weekly basis, we can measure how much contingency is being used. If it starts to be used at a slightly faster rate than we thought it would, we get our dots that start to go up into the red. If they start to go up into the red, we're actually collecting data as part of this. Well, if you said you didn't do something, why didn't you do it? So you start to pick up reasons for delay. That means you can go back, you can start to do some intelligent analysis and root cause analysis around the reasons for delay. You can do an intervention, and you can see if you can get it back in the green. It's not rocket science, and contractors will tell you that they're doing it day in, day out. Some of them are, most of them are not. But what does that do? That means that eventually, because we work within alliances, we train our contractors, we work with our contractors offline as well as during projects, we should have less money spent on prelims because we're on site less. We should have less time on site management, which means that we get more pounds spent on the asset rather than on the delivery of it. This is our BIM library concept. This is where if we can design the major things once and reuse them several times, we can spend some more time on innovation. It means that we're spending less time and less money on the pre-contract type design and the development of the final design with the contractor, which means that we get more money that we can spend on the asset rather than the procurement of the asset. The top left is a high-level sort of pictorial, if you like, of an exercise that we did on courts. We've systemised our court build, and we can build any court with 27 standard components. That has taken the cost down hugely from where we were with bespoke court designs. And each one of those modules would be a courtroom or a circulation area or a vertical circulation area, and it takes account of keeping defendants and judges separate That's been hugely successful. And we've got standard concepts for house blocks, for cells, and we've got our component library that just a rendition there on the top right. But all that is tied in to driving down costs so we get more money on the estate. So you've got your standardised components, and you can start to sweat how you use it. You can use those components, for instance, with Google Earth. Recently, we downloaded, well, the guys do it regularly, but this was a particular project that I was involved in where we wanted to come up with some really quick options appraisals. So we downloaded Google Earth image. There's a plugin that you can do which gives you a topographical view of the site. You can't use it to build from, but it's good to make some early stage decisions. We could then use those standard components to start putting together the establishment that we wanted at the top. You can then drop that on your site, and very quickly, and I'm talking about 24 hours, you've got a site with a layout and a standardised building on it. If we can link cost into that, which is our next thing, you can start to get some really good early stage information to start to make some decisions. You start to use some of your other applications, such as sort of sun movement. You start to orientate it on the site very quickly. When you get to the model you want, you can send that over to your contractor, who then starts using that information to build his development projects on. And at the top right is the Kobe data, where everything's stored, where that's where we can sort of share our data. That's where we can interrogate our requirements. And the bottom left is just, we're actually going through a major office redevelopment at the moment as well. So we've used BIM on our office redevelopments, which means other government departments can use our standards that we started to build on office layouts as well. So this is our continuous improvement loop. We started off, our standards were specifications, drawings, technical notes. Very difficult to interrogate. You had one bit about ethos at the top, and then you had another bit about control and restraint somewhere else. Very difficult to pile it all together. Well, what we've done now is take those, turn them into building information model elements, so cells, offices, classroom, roof structures. We can use those to put into our tender documents. We send those tender documents out now as a sort of rough model with information in it to our contractors. They've got a better level of information that we gave them before. There's a better understanding. They can assimilate what we want quicker. So it means their tenders to us at the first stage are better. They're better informed. They then take that model, they build it up onto their developed stage where they can construct it on site. We get our handover documentation. We put it into the CAFM system. But then we do our post-occupancy evaluations, our lessons learned, and all that feeds back into the standardised libraries. So any lessons learned can go around, again, any new innovations, any things that didn't work that we thought would work, we can change. Which then all is pushed to try and drive up the value of the asset, drive down the cost of procurement, and drive down the cost per metre squared. Okay, Cook and Wood. How am I doing for time? Okay. Sorry, I told you I had a lot of slides, apologies. This is a really interesting slide. The bottom bit, the traditional sort of sawtooth, is that we had different teams working at different stages. So design teams, and then they went through to tender teams, and then the tender teams passed it over to the production teams, and then the production teams then handed it over to the final FM provider. And each one of those interfaces, you sort of lose a bit of knowledge. And then the team coming in then has to get up to where that team was and then build a bit more information. Then they pass it on. So each one of those interfaces is time, and time's money. So we're losing money every time we go from one phase to another. With BIM, you're getting that information in the model. So as I'm passing it, I'm passing you the information that I've got. More importantly, if you start to bring in soft landings, if you start to bring in the constructor at an early stage, you're getting the same team that's actually working on that information, building the information up, passing the information between themselves. A much better flow. You start to gain value hugely. So with Cook and Wood, we had some really clear initiatives. We had lean principles that we wanted to make part of the project, which is on all our projects. We wanted to implement BIM. We wanted to bring in soft landings, two-stage tendering, early contractor involvement and specialist involvement, and also project bank accounts. So we were paying our SMEs at the same time as we paid our tier ones. There's a story in there, but it was efficient, it was really good, and I can assure you, when I sat the team down for Cook and Wood and said, hey guys, this is what we're going to do all this on this project, and they did look at me as though I was slightly mad, but it worked. It worked. Early contracting, early stakeholder engagement. Emily Thomas, she was the governor at Cook and Wood, and we sat down with her and her management team really early on when we were developing the BIM model. And she was able, as the statements round her say, and her team, to be able to understand what she was going to get. And so some of those sort of phrases that she said, the quotes, for the first time I could understand the building design, it allowed me to contribute and to comment. As, you know, I'm not good at understanding drawings, but with the ability to view what I was getting, it meant that when they went into the building for the first time, it felt as though they'd already been there. That's quite a strong statement. But the real indictment to this is that we took about 800k out of our scoping document at the beginning, because we sat down and she said, I don't want that wall there. I don't need as many staircases as that you've put in. And so working with the end user, we were honing down what they were going to get. The only trouble with this is that you start to get into too much detail. She didn't like the colour of the design team didn't like the colour of the worktops. So we had to say they're just indicative. But a small price to pay for being able to share what you're providing to your client base, especially if they're not construction experts. So there's a bit of why wouldn't you do this? If you're buying something, why wouldn't you want a BIM model to see what you're buying? It's quite powerful stuff. So Colin Magna was the contractor's BIM manager, and there were some really good quotes that Colin has said. Colin was really the sort of mentor for the contractor group and the subcontractors as we were running through this. But he said, accessing all project information from a single combined model significantly reduces the scope of error, and it can. And it's just something that I wanted to run into. The three pictures on the bottom right. The team built, within the accommodation block, there's 180 cells roughly in the accommodation block. Each one has got a service duct serving 2 cells, so there's 90 service risers. And they've got lots of services in. So the team built a one-to-one model on site of a riser. They then invited the FM team to come and critique it. And they made several changes. We then scanned it. We then put it in the model. But we started to get that end user ownership before we were anywhere near getting to site. What that meant is that we probably took about, I don't know, 20, 25 minutes of service time out of servicing a duct. Or we made unblocking a sink really efficient. But if you've taken 25 minutes out of a duct maintenance schedule and you've got 90 of them on the site, that's quite a lot. If you're then putting that into your standards and you're starting to leverage it over your whole of your estate, that's a huge saving. It's really worth thinking about. So we went on to, Colin facilitated the design team meetings, and what we had there, you can see one of the design team meetings, they had the federated model up, and they were using the federated model to review as a team, because you can see the clashes there. You know, they'd run the clash detection, they'd run the routines to say, are we providing what the client wants? And so in a 3D interactive model, they were making things better. And so that design effort, that's on the larger scale, it's a graph that we all know and love, is that the later you make a change, the more it costs you, or the less value you get into the project. Putting BIM at the heart of and collaborative procurement at the heart of the way that we deliver projects means that blue curve is where we're making all our decisions. So we're making them in an area where we can get best value out of them. This was, I can't vouch for the absolute figures in this, but this was something that the Andy Pearson, who was one of the directors at Interserve. Now, bearing in mind, this was a contractor that put this on the slide, but it was an article from The Economist. The figures I can't vouch for, but they feel about right, that 30% of construction process is rework. It is. You know, when you go on site, something gets done, it gets taken out, it gets redone. BIM should help you, or help us, to stop that happening. 60% of labour effort is wasted. I'll sort of show an example of that. 10% loss is due to wasted materials. 3 to 5% of construction turnover is lost at those discipline interfaces. This is an article from The Economist. So there's a lot of waste in construction. It's there, and together we need to try and identify and drive it out. And that's how we'll get to 33% lower buildings, 50% quicker. And bearing in mind it was the industry that signed up for that, they're aware that all this happens. We just need them to engage with us. That's why we need intelligent clients to enable them to engage with us at the right time as well. So this was the sort of model that we built before we started on site. And Andy, if he was here, Andrew Pearson, if he was here, would say, we built the project twice. We built it once in digital format, where we made the mistakes, where we put the mistakes right, and then we built it once on site. There was some still mistakes that we made on site, of course. But I think the amount of rework that we had was far less than we would have done, because we built it virtually first. Power of BIM, you can see the bottom, before and after. So this was an actual cut taken from one of the clash detections where we had one of the ducts going through the middle of a door. Because we reviewed that at the right time, we changed it, we put it right. We were using precast panels. Had the door came in the precast panel, very difficult to change where the door is. The guys wouldn't have noticed that it hit the door until they started to put the air handling duct up. So then what do? You then have to scratch your head, what should we do? You then have to put a kink in your air handling gear. That then needs to be redesigned to see if it's a hindrance to airflow. You need to get your offsets manufactured. Then that probably crashes into one of your other M&E systems, your pipe work, so you need to shovel that across. Before you come to site, we could just move the door over, or we could just move the duct over. So the time it gets to site, we're not going to get the clash. It's obvious, but it really does drive out cost. And this is quite a complex sort of junction where we've got a precast panel coming into another precast panel, where we've got cast-in conduits, where we've got the security fixings for that metalwork goes into the wall. If you're trying to coordinate 3 or 4 drawings, a structural drawings, a secure metalwork drawing, mechanical drawing, it's very difficult to overlay those. And the guys do it really well, but it's still very difficult to overlay. In a BIM environment, you get that clash. You know whether the bolts that you're putting in, your rebar that's going to hold your security metalwork, is going to crash through where you've put your cast-ins for your M&E boxes. It just takes out the error. This is another one from the contractors, and they started to think about 2D, 3D. But then about 4D, 5D, about time, about trying to bring quantities into the model. So they started to use it to break down in elemental format and create their own bill of quants from the model. They then started to sort of do automatic takeoffs, put costs in with that. And their view is that as they start to develop this, they'll be able to get their tender pricing much better than it is now. Much more automated, much quicker, because they've got this library of information and quantities. So contractors are really starting to see the benefit of this. That 2 minutes, okay, great. I'm going to go very quickly. This is just one of the meetings that we had on site with the subcontractors, weekly meetings, because we wanted the contractors. In here are the scaffolding foreman. It's the crane driver. They're actually working together to do a forward look for the next week, and they meet daily in huddles as they do. But this is about engaging the workforce. Here, I just wanted to show this is where our Kobe drop, and we're actually now getting our Kobe drops, and we are automatically completing our FM systems, operational systems, when we finish the job. So this is, before we had to sort of take the information and manually upload it on the FM system. We're doing that automatically now. I'm going to skip through those. So at Cook and Wood, we independently verified that we made sort of 20% savings. The red is the red dot is some work that was done on pilot projects before we got on board, and that included St Bart's Hospital in London, and that's their measured savings from BIM. The green line is what they thought they might get once we became mature. The tower there is rather simplistically, I put in where we gained sort of 20% saving at Cook and Wood. And this was the report that's on the website that independently verifies the savings that we made at Cook and Wood. So in summary, we've got a lean project management system in place. We've been by default now within MOJ. We've got benchmark targets established, which we are setting and ramping up year on year. We've made our 20% cost reductions. Last year, we delivered 23% on our 0910 benchmarks. And we've got a 15% increased proportion of our pound now goes on our asset rather than on the procurement of that asset. And we've got a big forward pipeline. And these are just some of the models that we've got currently in play at the moment. And this is a major new development, £260 million new prison in Wrexham, which that's actually going to go in asset tagging to ease the FM operation as well. So that's it. Thank you.